Good afternoon, Nate. Pete Haley with NBC Sports Washington. What,
Hello?
hey, thanks for doing this. What things can your return units do in the coming weeks to try and spark more big plays and create more yardage in those areas?
So actually the two different return units at this juncture right now, we've had two longer punt returns than we had a longer one this year than at any time last year. That was the one Steven Sims had at Cleveland. And then Isaiah had a decent return this last week against the Rams. So the punt returns have been the ones we've gotten have been a little better in comparison to last year. The kickoff return phase is a function of penalties, and it's not like there's been 100 kickoff returns yet, but basically improving our angles and our drop urgency on the kickoff return, which has caused a couple penalties. One of the penalty last week where Danny got past the 20 was an illegal wedge, and J.D. McKissick was running to his person that he's supposed to block, and somebody that was engaged with someone out of the setup zone just ran into him. So it wasn't a poor decision or anything. That one was just happened to be a tough bounce for us. But if we get those things cleaned up, when we get those cleaned up, then we'll be better. Because the ones we haven't had penalties on have been, the first one in the game, we got past the 25 against the Rams. So just got to clean up the penalties and our drop angles.
Thank you.
Hey, Nate, how much, if at all, is kicking affected by there not being fans in the stands?
The actual place kicking?
Or field goals, either one.
Yeah. So the question is field goals or extra points. That's a great question. I don't know exactly if it affects the kicking. I know that allegedly no movement in the stands or anything that doesn't bother or affect kickers according to them, but it might. I think just the general consensus I've heard from players in general is that just maybe the intensity, the energy that they get from the fans might help lock them in a little bit. So, there could be a little effect on that, but in terms of the actual aesthetic view of the kicker, I don't think that really, I'd rather have it still than a lot of people moving around, but definitely playing to the crowd, or it's a big kick and there's a lot of crowd noise. That actually helps some people. So there could be a little effect to that.
I thought it might have maybe changed the wind or something like that, but I could also be totally off base. Thank you.
No, that because I saw a little blurb about baseball, how just the human bodies in a stadium, and obviously there's something to that, but I guess baseball did a study or something where the lack of fans, the temperature. Now you want to get into compressing a football when it's really cold, so lack of fans when it's colder, then maybe that the thermal temperature could have something to do with that too. So that's a good point.
For sure. Thank you.
Yep, you got it.
Hey, Nate, John Kime. I'm curious, why is Cam Sims so good on special teams?
Cam is a great example of a player that is taking advantage of his role. And I know that may sound like coach speak, but his play and his playmaking ability being enhanced and being viewed through the lens of special team is just creating confidence. So anytime confidence is created, it has a chance to enhance their performance. And that certainly has happened with Cam. He's made some plays and started playing more confidently, and he's a big, fast athlete that's hard to block. So he's finding the benefit of that as you get doubled more. So in the last game, he's coming off sideline, God, they're doubling me every time. I'm like, well, when you have as many tackles as you do, that's part of the game. So I think, John, it's a function of confidence and just getting out there and getting exposure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Nate. It's Rhiannon Walker with The Athletic. Nice to see you again.
Yes.
I'm just curious, as far as what you've seen from the team so far, what are some things that you want to see improved as the season moves forward? I was looking at some of the numbers, and last year you guys were fourth in kick return yard average, but this year you guys are second worst in the league. What do you attribute to that, and what do you want to see improved?
Well, that's my job, obviously, is to factor in where we have been, where we're going, when that happened last year. And as you look at last year, I'm just going to use this as a reference. We got better as the year went. So regardless of the pieces of the puzzle that we have on special teams, whether it's by injury or by who's active or inactive, and we make all those decisions with Coach Rivera and what's best for our whole football team. But we improved as we went, and the end result was that statistic. That's not where we started. So where we're at right now, the numbers may be down right now because of the lack of return, meaning we haven't returned as many footballs as we will by the end of the year. So what we have to do is get better. And I can't sit here and explain away any poor statistics, but we can help the players to see where they can improve, how they can improve. And if we just keep getting better, we're going to be in good shape.
And then how do you all plan to get better when your top two return guys in Greg Stroman and Steven Sims are currently out? Like, who do you put in place to step in and help increase those numbers?
Well, for example, Danny Johnson, who we have confidence in Danny. And like I said, Danny took the very first one of the opportunity of the Rams game and took it past the 25-yard line. We would take that every single time. So, and that was blocked well. So, there's evidence, and with us as coaches being able to show evidence to the players on film, look what happens when we do it right. There's been times where as a coach you don't have any good evidence to show them, so you're sitting there trying to create faith without visual evidence. Well, we have some visual evidence of what we have to do, and the guys we have are certainly capable. Rihanna and Isaiah Wright, for example, is a rookie, and he's learning and getting better, but there's a lot to learn. And without a preseason and that stuff, it's not an excuse. It just created less exposures for those guys to grow. But we can do what we need to do with Danny and Isaiah, for example. But it's easy to say we wish we had this guy and that guy, but we don't have them right now. So we have to move on and roll with the guys we have and get everything we can out of them.
Thank you, Nate.
Hi, Nate. Nikki Jabvala with the Washington Post. Corey Vedvec, I know he's on the practice squad, but what intrigued you about him?
Well, the thing that's in vogue right now, and it's important, is having a player that can do punts, kickoffs, and place kicking, and also hold. And that's a large, wide skill set. So he can do all of those. And because if the COVID thing happened to one of our players, we don't know exactly which one it's going to be. So having somebody with that kind of versatility is key. And he's got all of those. He's also a nice built, like has a good frame. He's explosive. He's a talented player. So the fact that he's very versatile and talented makes him very intriguing, and we're getting to know him as a person. He's not been here very long, but we're liking what we've seen out of him so far. But the versatility is the main thing right now under these circumstances.
So is it, when you say it's more in vogue, is that specifically because of this year, or is that more where the game is headed?
Yeah, no, because that's a great question. Basically, because of the pandemic, if somebody got sick on Sunday morning and it was your kicker, then you need to have someone that can kick, and it could be the punter. And if it's the punter, then he's got to be able to punt and hold. So that's the real reason, because most of the time, if you have an injury, you would have all week to have a workout of just punters or just kickers or just long snappers, for instance. But because you don't know exactly, and it could hit literally the day of the game, and because of the protocols, they couldn't wake up. If someone woke up with the flu and they could say, hey, I'll make it through it. I mean, we've had a lot of players play sick over the years, but with the COVID-19, if they're positive, they're not playing. So that's what creates the totally unique environment that we're talking about.
Thank you.
Yes.
Harris?
I'm actually good.
Good.
Thanks.
JP, you on? Ben? No No, Ben. Russell, go ahead.
Hey, Nate, how are you? There's been a lot of talk about the MetLife field turf and you know the problems that teams have had. Just in general for a place kicker, how big of an advantage is it to kick off a field turf versus natural grass? You know, and I know we haven't gotten to the point of the season where you know the fields are super chewed up, but is it a huge advantage or is it just a kind of a small advantage?
Well, I think if you ask all the kickers that kick on any kind of surface, that a consistency in footing, because there's a plant foot that you would like to stay in place as your body's executing the rest of the kick. So definitely an artificial surface of sorts is going to at least give you consistency. And nobody likes any kind of a plant leg on slippery type surfaces or soft surfaces. So the advantage is a consistent surface to operate, hold the ball, your plant leg, kicking through with your toe, not catching it fat because the grass is tall or thin if it's short. But these guys are so good in the NFL and they can kick on any kind of surface that almost gets masked over. But to your point, that I would say definitely if you polled all 32 of the kickers in the NFL and said, would you rather kick on a consistent dry surface? They would all choose yes. I'd be shocked if they didn't. So the consistency definitely would be a good thing.
Thank you.
All right, let's go Ben, Les, and David Barnes to finish us off.
Hey, Nate, good to see you.
Yes.
We was just curious about Khaleke Hudson. Obviously, seems to make more sense to ask you about him right now than Jack Del Rio, since he's primarily playing on teams. What have you kind of seen out of him so far? How has he been progressing this year?
Well, and along with the other rookies, just with the lack of live preparation that's been well documented since we started back practice, the learning curve has had to been speeded up for all of our players. Khaleke took a big step last week. He's actually the one that when we were backed up on the 1 yard line and punted it out of there, and the result of the play was good. We netted over 40 yards on it. Khaleke's actually the one that made the tackle on that, a solo tackle. And he's also the position he plays on the punt team. He's aligned the deepest on the punt team in the interior other than our PP, DeShazer Everett. So for him to protect under those conditions, being backed up and run down and make a tackle, that was fun for him to make a play. He's also been, if you notice, rushing punts. He's been around the punter quite a bit in most of the games, which was something that we really liked coming out of college with him. So he is really improving, and it took a little bit. He's been working at it, and I expect him to keep improving. And as we talked about earlier with Cam Sims, with that improvement comes confidence, and then players can start playing to a higher level when all that happens together.
Thank you.
Hey, Nate. Les Carper at the Washington Post. Good to see you.
Hey, Les.
How you been?
Good.
A couple things. The first one really quick. With this sort of Swiss Army knife sort of guy you put on the practice squad who could kick and punt and hold, do you have to keep him away from the other kickers and holders?
So I don't want to cut you off. Were you done with the question?
Yeah, that was the first one.
It seemed like you had more there, but it's coming later. His number one objective is to stay healthy, right? Because if you have in essence, a backup for several players and he's not healthy, then that defeats the whole purpose. So he absolutely is coached and understood to be away from everybody. He's out there working with us, but it's easier for us, as you guys have all seen that come to practice all the time. When we're on our own field, we're kind of spaced out anyway, but he has to be really, really diligent with that in meetings. And he doesn't come to all the meetings, for example, and the ones he comes to, he's got to be really, really careful with that. As you know, the league has obviously had great protocols in place for safety, and they're even ramping those up, which is well documented. So everybody is being read the same message, but he's certainly one that, because he backs up more than one person, has to be extra responsible.
Well, the other thing I wanted to know about was this sort of bottom of the roster sort of, churn that's coming right now, the new staff and all that. How much does that affect you?
It affects us a lot. And I know that all of you that interview me from time to time, I say the same thing, but there's no other place on the roster where your best player, for a good reason, might go start on defense because of an injury or another circumstance. And usually if you lose your best player, you're not happy, but that's happened. So there's going to be some players that are starting here and there on offense and defense over the course of the year and maybe not play as much on special teams. So we have to adjust and put the best product and the best unit out on the field to help our team win. That's the biggest challenge, because ultimately all these guys want to start on offense or defense. But whether it's injury or promotions or them trying different roles, or maybe they put in a package for this offense or defense that they're facing that requires different players, and those are some of our main special teams players. That happens all the time. And if you don't like dealing with that, then doing my job probably isn't for anybody. But it's hard. It's a challenge for sure.
Yeah, thanks.
Hi there, Coach. I wanted to ask you about the fake punt Baltimore had a week ago. What was your critique when you looked at that later? And was it a formation that you could show your guys, hey, this could lead to a fake punt, or somebody did something?
Right.
What was your critique on that?
Okay, so just in a summary of the play, that's around midfield. So obviously that there's less risk reward for it's more reward than risk for the team on offense, because basically if they punt the ball there and do a good job and down it on the 5-yard line, for example, and if we have to punt it back to them, let's say the offense moves it a little bit, you're backed up and you punt it out of there, they might get the ball back about the same spot. So they're taking a calculated chance. And with Sam Cook, who is an excellent thrower of the football and the big receiver there, where they were on the field, the fact that they have a receiver playing the gunner spot are certainly ingredients to have a fake. So you can give the corner in that case. So we were in a package of ours that's on film, so it's no secret, where most of the guys on the field are defensive players, because we're trying to stop a run fake by the body types we have in there. If you have your regular punt return team out there, they could snap it and run a run play right at you. So we have our bigger players out there, but where they attacked us was at the corner position. The most common technique to cover a gunner singled is to press them. So they did a really, really good job of executing the play. And I don't know, I think Sam's completed almost every fake, if not every fake, in his career. And they had a good environment for it. Our player played it decently, but they did a nice job of the play. And all we can do there is mix in some different tools and maybe show some off coverage and different coverage. So when people are preparing to run a fake, that we don't do the same thing every single time. So to combat that, it's more of what we can do and tools we can give our players. It wasn't really anything totally unexpected. You could get that there, certainly with Sam's throwing statistics, and they did a good job executing the play.